Full interview with Vivek Jacob, sports journalist. What's your name, your job, and your major?
My name is Vivek Jacob. My job is a freelance sports journalist, and I majored in economics at the University of Toronto.
Let's start with an easier question. What's your favorite thing about your job?
Sports. I love sports, so being able to cover it is great.
Have you always known that this was a career you wanted to do since you were young? If so, tell me why. If not, tell me what major or minor events influenced you to choose this path.
I did not know I wanted to be a sports journalist. I've always had a passion for sports. I played sports growing up for my high school, for my university, and recreationally. But I think the way Indian culture is, it was always viewed as a hobby, and so my focus was always on school, which is why I went to U of T for economics, and I actually worked in finance for about 5 years. But about halfway through that, I realized that that was something I didn't want to do for the rest of my life, and again, because of that passion for sports, I was keen to get involved in sports in some way. And I started my own blog, and then things sort of evolved from there to where we are now.
Do you consider your job repetitive? What usually happens in your typical workday?
It's repetitive in the sense that, the NBA, I mainly cover the Raptors, so the NBA has an 82 game season, so you're just covering game after game after game. But it is very dynamic in the sense that the storylines are changing all the time, and no one game is the same. And a typical game day is usually me watching some film of the opponent on in the morning. Then I sort of take some time to myself in the afternoon, just because I know I have to. If the game's at 7:30, I'm usually at the arena at around 5, and I'm there probably till about midnight. And so you're getting set for pregame interviews with the coach and potentially talking to players. Then you're analyzing the game, writing off of it, and then you're speaking to the coach and players after the game and writing and finishing your story after that. So that's what a typical game day looks like for me.
In what ways does your job benefit society? Would you say that you're helping others?
I think it helps society in the sense that I think a lot of people view sports as a way to disconnect from their everyday lives and just support a team, come together as a community, like especially on social media, like Raptors Twitter, I think is a great example of people just coming together for that game and experiencing it together. And so being able to contribute to that experience is cool. And I think, staying on top of all the other human elements that also come with sports is also important.
What do you think is the biggest misconception people have about your career?
I think for one, because of maybe some of the mainstream analysts or journalists that you see that can be very hot takey, I think people assume that everyone is like that, and so I think that is a misconception that exists, and so maybe the work that goes into actually understanding and studying the history of the game, and the amount of context and knowledge that goes into a lot of people's takes is often ignored. And just because I think, the ones that do get the most attention are the ones that are extremely hot takey.
In your opinion, what makes up a good story? What elements would it have to have?
So I think for me, the beauty of the way sports is being covered more and more now is there is greater diversity. And so recognizing the value of your interests and bringing out your voice is important, because I think if you were to only think of, hey, what is the mass going to be interested in, then I think you run yourself into a tricky situation. So for me, I learned fairly quickly that if I'm really curious about something and I'm really interested in it, not only will there be other people interested in it, but I will also write that story to the best of my ability because I feel so strongly about it.
Would you consider yourself biased? And how do you try to get rid of personal biases to ensure that the information that you are reporting is accurate?
Yeah, I think, bias is a very important thing to be conscious of. And I think, as I said, like watching every single Raptors game twice, it's very easy to be so focused on, even watching a game being like, oh, the Raptors are doing this wrong, as opposed to the opposing team is doing this right, and I think those types of things are what I try to be mindful of, and avoiding those biases. And so that's again where, like, on those game days, watching the film of the other team, understanding their key statistics and all of that going into a game helped me sort of balance all those things. And I think with any story, whatever you're covering, it's always being conscious of trying to tell the truth and not necessarily, just what you think is the truth.
In your career journey, what are some lessons you learned? If you could do it all over again, is there anything you would change? If so, what?
Probably would have started sooner. Probably would, go back to the start of university and change my major. But I think it's all contributed to the type of journalist I am now. And I think, frankly, there's even ways now, you look at the way analytics has infiltrated sports. I think there's elements of my economics background that helps me in that as well. So, maybe it's all worked out for the best. And so, yeah, maybe little things like that. And just, if I was in this career longer, maybe you think about having advanced further already. But, I think it's all part of the journey.
In general, what are your biggest concerns about the job market in the future?
Yeah, I think, one of the issues I find as a journalist, especially when we have these conversations about telling the truth and being sort of pure about the writing aspect of it, because of the way the internet is and things being so clickbaity and click oriented, I think that's becoming just a bigger and bigger challenge as we go on. And especially when you look at, who's buying all these news outlets, and, the way that they're sort of profit minded to the point where you're ignoring just like telling good stories. I think that would probably be my biggest concern.
Finally, what tips would you give to young people who have trouble deciding what job or major they want to pursue in the future?
I would say it's a really hard thing for a young person to do, but you always have more time than you think. And so be patient and be true to your passion. Like, we live in a world now where whatever your passion is, you can make something of it. And, maybe there was a time in the past where, you had to get very, very specific types of jobs to, live a sustainable life. And I think that's less and less true. And so I'm a huge believer that if you pursue something that is your biggest passion, then you will fight the hardest for that to work.